Right now. Okay, so today we are, let me see. Okay, can you see the ones online? Can you see my screen?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, now today this is the third dimension of organization. The one, you know, remember there was the structure, social structure, physical structure, technology, and was the last lessons. And today we're going to have culture, which is here, and then today and tomorrow. And then next week we're going to have the last part, which is power and power, control, and conflict. And so we'll have finished the model. You know, a model is the interpretation of reality, is a guide to interpret reality. And we couldn't, so today, the thing of culture, now the first question that I'm going to ask you to do is, so we can get into it, what is your opinion? Can you give me a definition of culture, your own definition of culture? Yes.
May I?
You have a few minutes, there's 2 or 3 minutes to think about it. Okay, just think about it, and then we have each one of you will tell me his or her interpretation. Okay, when someone has, okay, go ahead.
Yes, so you can define culture as a way of life of a specific group of people. So it can involve the food they eat, the language they speak, and
Can you repeat? Is a way of life?
Yes.
Yes.
The way of life of a particular group of people.
It's way of life, please.
Yes, it's the way of life of a particular group of people. So it includes their food, language, the way they dress, and relate with others.
Okay. The same? Values, okay. Of every? It's a change for every country.
For every country, in which we can see every country.
It changes in each country. There is a different culture, all right? Okay.
I agree with my colleagues, but I would also add that I don't describe culture only around people. For example, for me, there is corporate culture, there is work culture, like it describes the ethics of that working atmosphere.
For me, culture is a way to differentiate several groups of people. And also I can define it as an organizational culture where people have the same values, the same goals, or for example, the same dress code or the same scope to accomplish.
The same scope to accomplish. Yeah. So a scope gives a direction to the culture. Do I understand correctly what you mean? Okay.
For me, I think it's like what we present a group of people, like a culture. So in each people is in each group it will be different, but it's like an adaptation. Like when you live at one society for a period of time, it's like what you adopt in that, like what represents some, what they do. It's like what you adopt.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we see the ones online. Please, it's your turn.
May I?
Yes, wait, Aguilera.
So since
Okay,
I was
yes,
studying a bit of
did
behavioristical
you
and
hear
cultural
your
studies.
colleagues or
Sure. What?
did you hear what your colleagues said?
Plus minus, yes. In general,
Okay,
I got
fine,
the.
go ahead. Then
Well,
it's
for
your
me,
turn.
culture is a certain set of behavioristical patterns in the society, which can be transmit and transformed and transparent from generation to generation. Basically, I really like comparison with culture, the word culture as it was origin in ancient Greek society is a in agriculture sector, what it means the certain species of plants which weren't natural by itself, but were cultivated by human. So culture is everything what was cultivated by human being and through certain traditions and educations transmit from generation to generation. It's set of behavioristical patterns and linguistical as well.
Okay. Thank you. Now we have Pizzarri, I
Yes.
think.
Okay, for me, it's the manifestation of the material, social, and spiritual life of a people in relation to the various phases of a evolutionary process or to different historical periods and environmental condition.
Okay, thank you, Pizzarri. Now it's Chowdhury. 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 It's your turn now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I hear you. Actually, culture, this concept, and I think it's the social behavior and in a today's norm, the human society, the knowledge, the tradition, and the regional laws, customs, capability. I think this one is the social behavior of the human and population of a certain area.
Of, can you repeat the last three words?
The social behavior, the social behavior of the region, of the regional.
Social milieu.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now it's Samania. Gertrude Samania.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, what's your definition?
My explanation about culture is the way people behave, like the way a certain group of people behave, and then also includes what they believe in, like their manners, how they dress, how they talk, their religion, their rituals, and several other aspects that are passed on from one generation to the other.
Okay, thank you very much. Mariam Garasjouiri.
Yes, I'm here. So for me, like culture is some kind of beliefs that we have, or maybe it's behavior and some kind of values. And even different companies have different kind of culture, and it forms people's life, what kind of way to live.
Okay, thank you. So what I gather from all of your, each one of you has focused on a different characteristic. So that shows that there is no one way to define culture. And because it's a very composite and rather new concept, it's in fact, it's only from, here I give you, according to British sociologist Jenks, the concept of culture originally referred to crops, and someone referred to agriculture. I think it was you or, okay. to crops, but sometime during the 19th century, social science extended the idea to include the cultivation of human beings, cultivation in the sense of upbringing, education. And following this trajectory, anthropologists and sociologists contributed much to the study of culture. And their work both extended the modern perspective and introduced the symbolic perspective to organizational theory. And we are interested in this part. Now, in 1871, British social anthropologist Tyler provided one of the earliest and most influential definitions of culture as that complex whole, and you remember that we gave a definition of complexity when different actors and different strategies and different positions interact, so that something is generated that was not expected beforehand. Acquired by men and women, of course, as a member of society. At the time, anthropology was focused on explaining how humans differ, and differentiation was actually defined by one of you, was called upon, difference. Explain how humans differ from other animal species and culture served as an initial answer. Fascinated by Charles Darwin's highly popular theory of evolution, they reasoned that if humans develop along some sort of evolutionary continuum, as Darwin showed for other animal species, then studying the evolution of human culture should reveal new information about the human species. Now, the point is that some of you refer to company culture. Said we have different companies and they develop different cultures. And this is actually, you know, the fact that in the Industrial Revolution, you had, for the first time, large groups of people getting together for the production and under the command of managers or owners. And so they especially at the end of the 19th century, there was what was called the scientific management of labor, in which everybody being a worker would be expected to do the same elementary motions and the same elementary actions and behave in a certain exact way, exactly similar to the other one. So that human beings started to become like machines, in the sense they were interchangeable, supposedly. You know, it was thought that, you know, if this person learns to do this thing, then another person and does it in exactly in the way we tell him or her, then we can change him or her whenever we want, so that we are not dependent from a labor force. That was the idea behind it. And so, and here we have cultural elements that go from, you know, technology and tools are part of a culture, because whatever, and then you have also the physical structure of a company. Now I give you two examples. Have you ever seen these buildings, these two buildings? They are in Prague, they are by this architect, it's called Gehry. And you know what this is? Now, I want to draw your attention first to this. This, you know what this represents? Is the House of Music in Prague. And Gehry, it took an example from inspiration from Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing. And now this was accepted as an invention. But then there was a big quarrel in Prague saying that, look, the center of Prague is more with these kind of buildings, what this thing doing there. It does not come to terms with the rest of the culture of the. So that was exactly the point. The architect said, we don't have to be homogeneous in everything we do. We can invent something different, and that difference is enriching a place. It's not making it poorer. And in fact, the defense of these buildings was towards the fact that this was a heritage of the old culture concerning labor, that each worker had to perform exactly the same actions as the other ones. And he said, no, that doesn't work any longer. We know that instead we have to praise the differences among people, different people, be that they male or female of different cultures. They bring their own expertise and their own tradition and their own religious beliefs or whatever. And so you don't have to build a new building exactly in the same style as the other ones. So here as a physical structure, this is now, do you know this building? Have you ever seen it before? This is still Gary's architect, but this is a building that was he was in charge by the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now, this is certainly something you would not expect from an Institute of Technology. And then he said that, well, when you have to have innovation, even in technology, you have to think not exactly straightforward, but you have to take different paths. Of course, that's not just an easy way, but it says, so this is said, my interpretation of innovation in technology as the purpose of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that is the one I interpreted. And I say this building where you have lessons and research, it represents better than just a square kind of building. So culture is embedded in all features, be that physical or symbolic, that we encounter, whether we work, whether we are in a university, or whether we just are learning on our own, because we are not isolated individuals, but we belong to a texture, to a social texture. So culture is embedded everywhere, in symbols, in constructions, in technology, everywhere. Now, some definition of organizational culture that interests us closely. We start from the 1950s. So the culture of the factory, you see, that was pointed at the factory, is its customary and traditional way of thinking and doing of things, which is shared to a greater or lesser degree by all its members, and which new members must learn and at least but partially accept in order to be accepted into service in the firm. So, as you can see, up to the beginning of the years 50, you had to share the culture that was typical of that specific factory, and in order to be able to work there. So this homogeneity is stressed by the organizational culture. There is one and only one best way to perform your actions and your work. Then we go on. Culture is a system of publicly and collectively accepted meanings operating for a given group at a given time. The system of terms, forms, categories, and images interprets a people's own situation to themselves. In 79, so we have more than almost 30 years from this to that. Now, I draw your attention on this. A given group at a given time. So it's embedded in this definition, the fact that culture is not static, but it's in becoming, okay? And that is the problem of when you consider this becoming with, some of you mentioned tradition. So what's the relationship of this becoming of culture with traditions? Be they social or religious or whatever. So he is stressing this change. System of terms, forms, categories, and images in terms of people's own situation to themselves. You see, it's how you represent reality to yourself and to your peers in that group. Then we have another one. Organizations are culture-bearing milieu. That is, they are distinctive social units that possess a set of common understandings for organizing action. For example, what we are doing together in this particular group, appropriate ways of doing in and among members of the group, and languages and other symbolic vehicles for expressing common understandings. This is important because if you are in a company which has an objective, a mission, and a vision, then you must not share in the same one best way, but confront yourself with the other people in the group and come to a common understanding of what the problems are and where the problems are, so you can go ahead and carry out and try to reach the goals that the company, that the organization has decided to achieve. Now, the pattern of basic assumptions that a given group has invented, discovered, or developed in learning to cope with its problems of external adaptation and internal integration, and that have worked well enough to be considered valid, and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to these problems. Now, you see the change between this and this is that here you have one way to converge of the group, but here is given from outside. Here is a common interpretation of what's going on. And this you need, according to Schein, is, I would say, is the most famous interpreter of organizational culture. He wrote a series of articles and books in 1985, and it's remained Schein and Algeris. And then we have culture refers to the knowledge members of a given group are taught to more or less shares. Knowledge of the sort that is said to inform, embed, shape, and account for the routine and not so routine activities of the members of the culture. A culture is expected or constituted only through the actions and words of its members and must be interpreted by, not given to, a field worker, is interpreted by, not given to a field worker. Culture is not itself visible, but is made visible only through its representation. Through its representation and through the actions that it performs, you know. This is a very pragmatic attitude, a pragmatist vision here, which is actually is not against what Schein says. It only is more specific and says, look, it underlines the issue of interpretation. We are here, we belong to the same situation, we belong to the same organization, but we have to interpret in the same way what's happening, because otherwise we cannot really give our support to the achievement of the goals that the organization is supposed to. Now, wait, it's 4 o'clock, but we started, so we do also this one. Cultures are collective phenomena that embody people's responses to the uncertainties and chaos that are inevitable in human experience. These responses fall into 2 major categories. The first is the substance of a culture, shared, emotionally charged belief systems that we call ideologies. The second is cultural forms, observable entities, including actions through which members of a culture express, affirm, and communicate the substance of the culture to one another, because so it enforces it. Now, you see that this below here, they are not very dissimilar. They stress different concepts. Here is interpretation. Here is the fact that the cultural forms have a life of their own, and they are very important. They become, it's not only a subjective kind of enterprise. The interpretation and the exchange of what the people's interpretation of what's happening are actually what is being built and constructed. And it takes actually observable entities. So culture is not something abstract up there, just words or ideas. It's something that becomes action, and through this exchange of ideas that lead to actions, through interpretation, you create a common feelings which are also emotional. you see, it's not only rationalistic, but it's also emotional, which is very important. And the reason why it was taken into consideration, because only a mere rationalistic view of life and of working life led to a lot of mistakes and a lot of problems, because people don't act only according to what is rational, but according to their subconscious, to their unconscious, and to their upbringings, and to not explicit ways of. So now we stop here for the moment. You can have your break, because I know that at 4 o'clock the coffee is ready downstairs. So we lost already some time, so please don't take more than 10 minutes, because we have more to see. Are there questions on the people online concerning what we've just said here? So what I want to stress here is that, you know, from the culture of the factory, from here to here, or only from here, from Jacques on to Shine. Of course, there are 30 years, there is a long time. Well, 30 years are a long time. And there's a whole different view of culture. Okay, I didn't want to go, I just was. Right. Go on. I'll stop recording. I was not. Now you see. Okay, so subcultures are very important, because when you realize that in your company there are several subcultures, then you have to direct your communications taking into account these different subcultures. Because of the way power is distributed in most organizations, top management typically creates the dominant subculture, which many refer to as corporate culture. It is called orthogonal when a subculture maintains independence from the influence of the dominant subculture, but not in ways that create conflict. And counterculture when a subculture actively and overtly challenges the values, beliefs, norms, and expectation of the dominant subculture. There is an example of General Motors with DeLorean, who was a leader of counterculture. That is, he was against the top management. He was one top manager himself, but he was against the dominant culture, because said, if we're going in this direction, General Motors won't have much future. And lower managers would take him into great esteem, and they would say he would become the next chief executive officer. This did not happen, and he left General Motors and he started his own automotive car company, which produced one type of sports car, which was not successful, and it went bankrupt. So the problem is that when you have a counterculture, even though you are strong and you have important ideas, if you leave the context, then to build your own company where you think that your alternative culture is going to be successful, it's not that easy, you know. So that this is an example that is made to say that one thing, well, corporate culture is almost automatic to be built, because, you know, the people that started the company have a number of myths, of stories. They say, because we were working hard and we were inventing this and that, we had little money. So all this kind of history that in part is true and in part is made up makes it a very strong beliefs. And of course, it can be, if it goes to success, like in the sense of General Motors was a successful company, in fact, for a number of years. Then in the years 80s, all of the big American car companies went into crisis because they suffered the attacks from the Japanese car industry, and they didn't have good quality as the Japanese, because the Japanese in the year 60s had very cheap and low cost cars. But then in the year 70s and the 80s, they had superior quality, and in that they could go and so the corporate culture is something that can be either pushing forward the company because of the strong beliefs in the history and the challenges that they overcame, and so that group can have the new entrants, the new managers, new people that have new ideas, and if they are not close, so they suffocate these new ideas, but they open the corporate culture to these new forces, then they can revitalize the company and avoid that people like DeLorean establish a counterculture, which brings about damages because, and then finally he has to leave, and the fact that he wasn't right, is shown by the fact that he wasn't successful. But so this is just to say that again, the fact that there was historically at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, at the end of the 19th century, the fact that from workers to the company, there was one and only one best way to do things. That went to shambles, especially after the Second World War. From the years 50s on, nowadays with the internet and everything, there is no one best way, but there are several ways that you agree upon in a company with different perspectives, of course. The technicians with respect to the marketing people, with respect to the commercial ones, vendors, and the ones that are in charge of procurement. Each one has a specific culture. The ones that do accounting usually are very precise, very specific, and they don't have good relationships of understanding with other people working in different parts of the company that are maybe, because of the job they have to perform, they are more inventive, not as specific as with the accountants or as people in production, right? So this is to say that some cultures can also undermine coordination and limit communication between parts of an organization. A problem given the metaphoric name silos, a term borrowed from the agriculture, where it refers to tall cylindrical self-contained storage units used to preserve harvested corn. When applied to organization, the metaphor describes strong organizational subcultures whose self-contained makes collaboration between them difficult or impossible and can lead to unproductive conflict. So the silos means that, for example, the ones that are in charge of research and development with respect to the people in marketing, they have a difficult connection, because the ones in marketing say, look, I understand that you're developing a superior material that's going to make a difference with our competitors, but then we have the opportunities that are going to be established only for such an if it's going to take you too long, then we won't be able to use the opportunity window. It's called that way. There is a window in which we can see a new opportunity, but if it takes you a long time to develop a new material that we are going to use, then that opportunity is going to evaporate and we won't be able to use it. So silos means when some parts of the organization builds a culture that's very defensive, saying we are the ones that really know what's going on and you have to listen to us. And that's not a way to go, of course. But then sometimes it's you have these people that have been very successful for a period of time, maybe during a crisis, and they made the difference for the survival of the company. And so they think they know more than what they really do in a new situation. So they build the silos, and that's only disruptive because it was useful in a certain period, but then it becomes like very defensive and it's not useful in a new situation, you see? So that's why, and sometimes the silos are built unaware in an unaware way within a company, because top management maybe supports that subculture because it needs it for a new situation. But then those people think they are better than what they really are, and they keep on trying to keep the other ones out of decision, and they say, we are going to decide because we know it better. Okay, so that's what this silos, this subculture undermine coordination and limit communication between parts. That's the meaning. That's what happens. Okay. Now, Shine, we've seen him before. He says this is what its model is all about: assumptions, values, and artifacts. Now, assumptions are taken for granted issues or things and are invisible, because what we assume, like we think that there's going to be every day the next day with the sunrise. We don't go out of the window and say, oh, is there a sun today? No, it's an assumption. So there are some cultures, there are some assumptions that you don't discuss and you're not even aware of them. Then from this assumption, values are built. These values are what is important, and of course values are transformed into norms. What are the rules for you, what is accepted for you to behave like, and what is not accepted. And then you have artifacts. That is, artifacts are, we can define, here we have examples. Objects, verbal expressions, and activities. In Talmud, there is this saying that is say, watch out for your thoughts, because thoughts become your words. And you have to watch out for your words because they become your actions. And you have to watch out for your action because they become habits. And habits becomes your character. And the character becomes your destiny. So you better watch out for all the procedures. Now here, from assumption to values to norms and to artifacts. Artifacts, in fact, indicate what the values and what the hidden assumptions are. For example, design a logo. We've seen one logo in a while when we speak about mission and vision. Jargon, names, nicknames, activities, ceremonies, rituals, rites of passage. Now, when someone is going to be promoted within a company, is becoming a manager, you have a little drink inside the company, whatever, usually non-alcoholic, okay? But you're going to have a cheer, or someone has becomes a mother or a father, then there is a small reunion in which, the colleagues celebrate the event, even if it's not because of but it's something that is, it becomes accepted in a company or it's not accepted. There are some companies that you don't have any celebration for a marriage or for, someone that's becoming a parent. Yeah. And in other companies, instead, it's even pushed forward, approved, because it means that people talk to each other in an informal way. Communication patterns. Now, there is one of the largest insurance companies in Italy has once a year the CEO that has a big meeting with all the 400 managers that are there, and he says what the strategies of the company, of the insurance company, will be for next year. what are the biggest challenges, etc. Now, that is a one-way communication. It's not a two-way. So there was once one of the managers raised his hand and said, I don't agree. I don't agree with what you said. I don't think the challenge is the one you said, and it's another one. And the next day he was out. Because it says, this is a one-way communication, not a both-way. When I prepared my, then we had meetings, preparatory meetings, then you could have said so. But here, it was just explain the mission and the vision for the following year, which is the direction in which everybody should, because the analysis was made before, so you cannot come at a general meeting like that saying, I don't agree. If you don't agree, you just leave the company, because that's what's going to happen next year, because we studied this. It's not that the CEO invented the thing. And so, okay. So these artifacts are not actually artifacts only in the sense, of course, there is the logo, there is the all the printed material, all the touch points with the internet. They are objects, artifacts in general, okay, which carry knowingly or unknowingly assumptions, values within the different artifacts. So Shine was the first one to give to have a system in which it says we have these three main areas, and the most visible one, even though it's difficult to interpret it, of these artifacts. If you work in the company, you understand why that meeting was called. For example, and we'll see the case, I'll show you the case, that one of your colleagues was here before, but then he left. Just came at the beginning. His name is not Farouk. Sano. He was here, but then he left. I didn't see. Anyway, he was saying something about no, 3 or 4 lessons ago. It was so anyway, so Shine is now, is there something is there some objection or some comments on this list here? Or not? Something you disagree upon? Now, you see, communication patterns or ceremonies, rituals, rites of passages. For example, in one of the cases, I'll show you, which I did my action research years ago, was that you need to have support from top management, because when you deal with the middle management, because they are the ones that you have to convince, because they are the ones that carry out most of the work. So you have to have top management that calls the ones that are within the project, that participate in the project, and has to say, okay, now I have authorized this project. You are going to work on it and do your best, because you are going to be evaluated by the results that this project is going to achieve. So these things, these ceremonies have a very important role. They are not just formal things which everybody just yawns and says, oh, once more. No, if they are properly handled, they have important consequences. No. What does an organizational culture do? Now, we were speaking in general. Now, if I represent the people in by means of this instrument, this musical instruments, who say that, you know, each one of the workers play a different instrument right now. The problem is how you put them together to make a sound that you want to achieve. Now, you have two ways to achieve this through, you know, the formal classical way in which, you know, they have to read the music and they have to perform exactly that. Or you have a jazz approach in which you have a theme, but then you invent, and according to what your expertise is. So in the end, the organizational culture guides people on how to relate to one another and on how the organization relates to its environment. This is if the organizational culture is treated properly by top managers, by middle managers, and by workers, and through the building of subcultures, specialized, you know, technical culture, it develops the relationships within the company and from the company onto the outside. Okay, different types of culture lead to different results. Let's see, here I hit each one of these. I'll show you, for example, high performance cultures. One characteristic is leaders are skilled, admired, and build organizations that excel at results and at taking excellent care of their people and their customers. Low performance culture, leaders provide minimal leadership. Now, you know how to define leadership? Is the capacity and the ability to influence the behavior of other people, not to make them do what they don't want to do, but to influence, that is to have them orientate themselves in a certain direction. Okay, so when leaders, the point is that, for example, in banks up to the years 90s in Italy, in banks, you didn't have leaders, you had just bureaucrats. And so the Bank of Italy decided to open these banks up, because up to the years 90s, in order to open another point of sale, let's say, of the bank, you had to wait for the approval of the central bank in Italy. From the years 90s on, it was your own business. If you wanted to open a point of sales, you would do it, and that's it. But then you needed to build leaders, that is, people that would be able to talk. It was not only a bureaucracy in which you knew exactly what to do, and this should be done, and this should not be done. But so you had to build leadership within banks, which was not easy at all. Clear and compelling vision, mission, goals. Now we'll see in the next slide what we mean by mission, vision, and etc. And strategy. Now, a strategy, you know that you define a strategy as a way to pursue goals, right? But then what's the strategic objective? Is a goal that if you reach it, you are very close to reach the overall endeavor that you are pursuing with the company. Clear and compelling. Why compelling? Because otherwise, if you don't have a mission, a vision, or goals and strategy that are compelling, it means that people don't really have a compass, you know. They either have to ask every day, what should I do to the boss, to the supervisor, but then that's not a way to go. Or you need to have some, mission, vision, goals, and strategy are actually a compass for people to get to know how they should, what solution to give to the problems. Vision, mission, goals, and strategy are not clear, not compelling, not used, or do not exist. Core values drive the culture and are used in decision making. You know, before we said the values, key values and norms. I mean, what is approved and what is not approved. So if you don't have them, then you're in trouble. are unclear, not compelling, not used, or do not exist, just like the ones before. Committed to excellence, ethics and doing things right. Now, the problems here we'll see. I don't know if we have time today, but certainly tomorrow, I'll go into depth on codes of ethics. Because I think in your project work you found some work of it. Now, there are some scholars that have examined a number of codes of ethics, and we'll speak about it tomorrow. And the question is, are they really useful, or are they more or less something like window dressing? That is, like, we have a code of ethics. Is that the case? Are they useful? Are they harmful? Are they properly made? Who writes them? And etc., etc. And we'll see that. So, committed to excellence. The point is, I am committed to ethics if I have a code, or if all the people are actually convinced that certain things have to be done, and not, they agree on certain principles, and those principles drive their actions and their decisions. Like a committed to excellence. Now, there was a famous book that's In Search of Excellence. It was in the years 80s, In Search of Excellence. What does that mean? It was saying that, the economy, the world economy in the years 50s, after the Second World War, was growing, and actually there were large spaces for markets to grow. Then in the years 60s, there was still there were a lot of open markets. In the 70s, with the oil crisis, you had some markets started to closing, and in the 80s even more so. And the book was written because its point was only if you are excellent you can perform better than your competitors. And there is a struggle for a shrinking marketplace, so that value is very difficult to be achieved. And so you have to be really excellent at whatever you decide to do, either be that a product or a service. And in order to achieve excellence, you have to be really, have performed all these areas here. Positive can-do work environment. This is very important. Tense, stressful, and resistant work environment. Open, candid, straightforward, and transparent communication. Now, I'll tell you this. Teamwork, collaboration, and involvement are the norm. Top-down decision-making with minimal teamwork, collaboration, and involvement. Now, this is really important for innovation, because positive can-do environment, you have to learn from your mistake. If your supervisor or your manager, your boss, is always pointing at you saying, oh, you made a mistake. Now, it depends. If you're doing a mistake because you're looking for some new solution, then it's obvious that you have to make a mistake, because it would be too easy to find exactly the solution to a problem. But then you can have that if you have a positive culture, that is, you are open to making mistakes if they're not just because you're absent-minded or you're not putting your brain to it. Teamwork, collaboration, and involvement. Emphasis on constant improvement, state-of-art knowledge and practices. Slow to make needed improvements and behind times in knowledge and practices. You see, you have to be, when we were speaking about continuous learning, that is part of the thing. And when you have these subcultures, it's important that these subcultures are formed on developing continuous learning within the company, with approaches to outside, to the external environment. Willingness to change, adapt, learn from successes and mistakes. Take reasonable risk and try new things. You see, when you try new things, okay, you have to take a reasonable risk. So if the thing goes wrong, then it's a mistake, right? But you learn from mistakes. Because if you don't try, you don't take a reasonable risk, then you will never change anything. So the culture here must support people that take a reasonable risk. Poorly planned change, resistant to change, minimal learning from successes and mistakes, and either risk averse or risk foolish. That is, you risk when no one would risk that, or you're risk averse. Just we are against anything new. We just stay with what we know, and that will go a little bit more in depth in the segment. I'll go more on exploration and exploitation of what you know and what you do, or exploring new ideas. Okay, so different types of culture lead to different results. And these are just a few examples. And of course, improvements where they come. Okay, guidelines for building and sustaining cultures. Make strategy and culture important leadership priorities. Develop, just read them. Monitor and manage the culture. Monitor. And why monitor? Because you want to find out if some silos or some cultures, close some cultures are being developed, so you have to dismantle them. I mean, Hewlett-Packard, HP, the famous, this is Dell, I think, not HP. Anyway, one of the CEOs was going around the company and would open the doors and say, why is this door closed? This has to be open because you must not dig your own little garden. If you're doing something within your working hours, then it must be available to the other ones. But the drawback on this approach is that, well, you want to have a satisfaction that if you are doing some work and it's very original, then you don't want other people just going there, copying it, taking the idea and having the successful and being praised, by the supervisor. So some of these approaches that come from this very important that the good idea that the CEO was trying to support in Hewlett-Packard was the fact that don't think you have your privately owned orchard. You have to do things and share them through teamwork with other people. Of course, not informally. You'll have to be praised for your work, but then try to communicate it through appropriate ways so that you can be praised and evaluated because of your contribution. But don't be selfish. Don't keep it all to yourself, because we have to. So monitor and manage the culture. Use simple saying, appoint a culture team. Well, usually culture teams are in the end, they do a company leaflet that so you have to watch that it does, a culture team does meaningful things, approaches important issues. It's not only something that you use at the canteen to have some gossip, for example. Also, is dating so and so on the other department. Not that, but sometimes that's the destiny of some of these culture teams. So you have to put a very pragmatic man or woman at the head of this culture team. Otherwise, they will only do useless words and useless meetings. And as meetings are very expensive, because then people travel and they use their time in these meetings, then you have to know that when one of the in one of the cases that I will tell you, when I went to this company to start my action research, I asked them, Well, how many meetings do you have? Oh, we have something like 700 meetings a year. Oh, I said 700 meetings, and then when do you work? Or you work during the meetings? You mean you're faking the fact that you're participating in the meeting, and then you're writing a report or doing some work. So from then on, the number of meetings were dropped. Because only if they could show that, why do you want to have the meeting? So what was the order of the day, what you should discuss, who approved the meeting on the management side. Changes in culture can occur because of budget cuts, rapid market changes, economic downturns, natural disasters, compromises in adhering to core values. Now, economic downturns or natural disaster, that's part of the crisis management. We'll spend one lesson on crisis management, good. And you have really, when you want to change a culture, there is nothing better than having an economic downturn when you're showing that, look, here we are losing money on, so not only cost cutting, but to say, how do we increase our revenues? What kind of new products, or how are we going to do better? But compromises in adhering to core values, and especially changes in ownership, leadership, or leadership practice. In fact, when you want to perform, you change some of the top management, you put new resources in, and usually new people, especially at the top, bring in new culture, new leadership styles, and that helps a lot. Now, so there is this now the ancient egg or hen kind of. What happens? You need to bring in some critical situations, which would be the egg, or we do have to have a new hen, something that are more capable. So obviously, it's the two that go along together. You have to bring in to support your changes here, identify, communicate, educate through either a new hen or old people that learned the lesson through an economic crisis, through a downturn, through market changes, so that they learn how to make more stronger eggs, in the sense that they are more valuable to people. So I think we can stop here, because otherwise, because it's 5 to 5. Okay, tomorrow we'll go on defining mission, description, and vision. I just give you the definition. A mission statement defines the organization, business, its objectives, and how it will reach these objectives. But what's the difference between this and the business model? Remember that we spoke about business model. The business model is very articulated, it's very analytical. This is a few lines, is a caption. It's very, a vision statement details where the organization aspires to go. So defining mission is a description, and vision aspiration. Why don't you use the next few minutes, or tonight or tomorrow morning, thinking about, if it's not there, otherwise if you just take it from the company you're studying for your project work, try to, if you cannot find it on the statement, invent it yourself, the mission and vision of the company you're studying. And we'll see, and I'll give you some examples tomorrow, and let's see if you can devise it, who are the companies that they have that. One you will not be able, because it's just too exaggerated. So we'll see tomorrow. Hope tomorrow I won't have this. We won't have, not I. We will not have these problems with the computer. So we finish here for today. We'll see you tomorrow at this time. I think I forgot to send you the slides of the technology. So I'll send them tomorrow morning. Okay? I think I forgot. When this happens, please, if I forget to send you the slide, tell me the next lesson You forgot to send us the slide. Please send it to me, to us. Okay? So that's a way to help me. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for your time. Okay, question on people that are online.
No questions.
You can be online.
No, I'm doing training.
Okay. Okay, fine. Okay. Okay. We'll see you then next week.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions online? Goodbye.
Goodbye, Professor. See you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow then. Okay. Good luck with Google or Peter.
Thanks.
Challenge there. Okay, bye.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I will think about open
Okay,
AI,
how
artificial
to,
intelligence.
you know, as this old saying goes, the only way to eat an elephant is to eat it in pieces. So just carve a piece out of or Google and start chewing on it. Okay, bye. We'll
Great
see you
idea.
tomorrow then.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.